Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Today we are honored again, especially in these times, to have the one and only Greg Palast. Greg Palast is known for his investigative reports for The Guardian and bestsellers, including The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Palast has just released his film about the latest attacks on the right to vote. It's called Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, narrated by Rosario Dawson and produced by Martin Sheen. Leonardo DiCaprio has made the film available for free streaming at a site he has launched called SaveYourVote.org. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Brother Greg Palast, and thank you for that documentary that you put out there. As I told you behind the scenes, I think it's the best work. And when I say best work, I mean the one that we need at this time. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I really appreciate your praise of the film. And one thing I want people to do is understand that Vigilantes Inc. is, while it is telling you some shocking material you must see and act on before the election, it's also a movie. It's entertaining. I mean, it's a documentary, but it's I try not to make it white guys in front of bookcases, though here I am, a white guy in front of a bookcase. It's an action documentary, And Egberto, if you want to cut in the trailer or some part of it,
will do.
You're telling me 2,600 miles away, 2 days before the election, that if I want to vote, all I have to do is show up and prove as an American citizen that I have the right to vote again.
Let me tell you the story. Why is it called Vigilantes Inc? The answer is that for the first time since 1946, since the Jim Crow era, we are having mass challenges of voters of color, Black people, Hispanics, Asian Americans, American natives, young people. In other words, voters of color, I mean the color blue. Now, I'm a journalist. This is nonpartisan. I'm just telling you what's going on. There's new laws. It started in Georgia, a new whole system where any individual can challenge another individual. It's not the government. I've been on with you, Egberto, where we talked about, these nasty purges in Georgia and these nasty, the government blockading people from voting. This is quite different. This is individuals. It's Greg Palast saying Egberto Willies is not a citizen. He should not be allowed to vote. I have no evidence of that other than he has darker skin than mine. I have no evidence that he's not a citizen, or I'll find someone, usually it's someone like Jose Hernandez, who's been deported. I say, oh, well, Jose Hernandez here in Arizona, obviously he's not a citizen because a guy named Jose Hernandez has been deported. Oh, James Brown has already voted in another state. So they literally said that 238 guys named James Brown were one person voting 238 times because James Brown is not, so you might say, well, wait, James Brown is a common name, not for a Republican. And so it starts out with the film about how 88 vigilantes, these are self-proclaimed vote fraud hunters, 88 of them challenged 180,000 people. Now, let me tell you, one guy, Alton Russell, personally challenged 4,000 people. All he did was get a name from a group called True the Vote. He got this list of 4,000 people, sends it into his county elections office, and they literally stop all 4,000 people from voting. Now, who are they? The overwhelming majority on that list were black soldiers sent to other bases, including he challenged the vote, this vigilante. By the way, Republican Party, and he's the Republican Party chairman in Southern Georgia. Challenged 4,000 voters, most of them African-American soldiers, including Major Gamaliel Turner, who you'll meet in the film. Major Turner is one of the Pentagon's top experts on warfare of the future. And he was sent, when the Ukraine war broke out, he was sent to California by the president, to the Fort Hueneme here in California. And he couldn't get his ballot. So he calls up his county elections board and says, where's my ballot? Where's my absentee ballot? They said, oh, Mr. Turner, you've been challenged. And he says, what? You've been challenged? What does that mean? What can I do to get my ballot? No problem. You just come into our office and prove you're an American citizen and prove you live where you live here in Georgia. because he has a beautiful home in Georgia. Just prove that and we'll let you vote. And he said, this is an African-American career officer, 70 years old. And they say to him, and he says, all I have to do 2 days before the election is fly 2,600 miles and prove to you that I'm an American citizen. This black soldier, I'm an American citizen again. And when he says again, he's referring to the Jim Crow era.
Right.
They picked on the wrong guy because when he said again, he says, I know, I've been there. He says, and I asked him, is this just Jim Crow? He says, it's no different than all the old tactics. It's no different. It's just a fancy form of how many pieces of bubble gum are in a jar. You know, it used to be in Jim Crow era that black people were shown a jar of jelly beans or bubble gum and say, how many pieces are in here? And if they couldn't figure out how many pieces are in that jar, they couldn't vote. So he says, it's no different. And he says, you talk to fools like that. And I'm not a fool. He says, this, my country now, black soldier, I have to fly to prove I'm an American. So you know what he did? He took on the case. Eventually, he did fly to Georgia. He actually flew to Georgia, but he also sent down a top Washington attorney. He had to go to federal court to get his ballot counted. And I want to tell you, so he won his case. He brings down Mark Elias, who is,
I know him well. Yeah.
Mark Elias was just hired by Kamala Harris as the Democratic Party's vote suppression expert. They flew down. So he had to bring in a big Washington lawyer, get his one ballot counted. No other white person had to go through that. But the judge would not give the ballot back to the other 4,000 voters, mostly, again, black soldiers out of Fort Benning. Now, and by the way, you'll see in the film, now this is pretty brutal and tragic and heartbreaking, but there's a kind of funny part. I'm laughing about it, though at the time it wasn't necessarily funny because the vigilante, this self-proclaimed vigilante vote fraud hunter, Alton Russell, he actually dresses up as a vigilante. He dresses up as Doc Holliday, you know, the guy that was at the OK Corral with Wyatt Earp. So he actually dresses as a vigilante, cowboy hat, cowboy boots, holster. You saw it, Egberto. Holster with a pearl-handled six gun. And by the way, he made us. I said, because he's going to our house, and I knew he didn't realize what was going to happen to him. I said, "Is that gun loaded?" He says, "Of course it's loaded. Why would I carry a gun that's not loaded?" I'm thinking, "Oh my God!" And so I said, "Do you know whose home you're in? No. You don't know where you are? No." I said, "Why don't you meet your host?" And out of the kitchen comes Major Gamaliel Turner.
Yes.
And he sits down, and I said, you challenged 4,000 voters? He says, "Yes, I did." He was very proud of it. I said, including the vote of Major Turner right here. And Major Turner says, my country told me to go to California. I've never missed an election till you stopped me from voting. And I said, do you want to? Major had asked me one thing, as you'll see in the film. All he wanted was an apology. And
he had a hard time even doing that.
He would not apologize. He would say, "Oh, I don't really understand the system." You don't understand the system, but you blocked 4,000 people from voting. In this vigilante. The major is very nervous. You'll see a gun in a Bible, and because his mother used to put a gun in every Bible. His father's a minister, so and a Bible in every room and a gun in every Bible.
Yeah.
And the major is thinking, if he goes berserk, am I going to be able to fire that gun? And so we went, that wasn't the only vigilante.
I saw the lady that she did several thousand.
Yes. Okay. One woman, Pam Reardon's her name.
Yes.
Now she was running for chairwoman of the Republican Party of Georgia. She works with Marjorie Taylor Greene and
Canadian born.
Yes. So this one woman challenged the voting rights of 32,000 people. I went through the list, overwhelmingly African Americans and young people, voters of color. The color is blue. And again, I'm not being partisan. There were 88 voter vigilante challengers in the 2020 election in Georgia. Every single one was a Republican Party official. Every single one. And so she challenged 32,000 voters. So I hand her. Now I go in, we do undercover, which you can't do with American television does not allow you to go undercover.
Yeah.
But I work with BBC television. I work with, with The Guardian. I'm still a writer for The Guardian out of London. And I'm required, if someone won't talk to me, always ask people for interviews, but if they won't talk to me, I then go undercover to get them. which I can't do on you. So you're going to see old-fashioned gumshoe detective work if you watch this film. And so I go to her, I get into her house. She doesn't know it's Greg Palast. I get into her house at first, then they realize, when I put on my hat. And so I showed her first a picture of one of her black neighbors, one of her African-American neighbors, young woman. And I said, "Do you know this woman?" "No." "Did you ever meet her?" "You ever meet her?" "No." "Ever call her?" "No." "Ever go to her house, visit her? You know where she lives?" "No, I don't know this woman." And I said, "Well, you challenged her right to vote, and you challenged 32,000 other people's right to vote." And she says, and I said, "Did you?" She said, "I can't call 32,000 people."
So you should be able to challenge them.
Right. So you couldn't call 32,000 people. You certainly didn't go to 32,000 homes, but you challenged their right to vote. And you know how she did it? She said, she actually told me before I confronted
She knew how
her,
you were. Yeah.
before she knew who I was, she goes, she says, "Well, when I put in the challenges, there were so many, I couldn't even afford to print them out because it had been a stack of paper like this. So all she did was send an email with 32,000 names of her neighbors in Cobb County to stop them from voting. 32,000, one person." And her reaction, now one thing you should say, if you're watching the film, you're going to see an AR-15 loaded. She had ammo, an AR-15 assault rifle right next to the door. She had ammo stacked to the ceiling, automatic weapons all over the place. By the way, she's a very wealthy woman in a big mansion.
Yeah.
Wearing this, Nancy Reagan red dress with the high heels and the whole thing. So she goes berserk when I said, "By the way, do you know that I asked the chief lawyer at the NAACP, who's in the film, Joe Griggs, this is a violation of the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. The Ku Klux Klan Act, she was acting like a Klansman." And I said, "You may have looks like you violated federal law." And she says, "I'm Canadian. I'm from Canada." I said, "What? I'm from Canada." And then I said, "But you it looks like you violate federal." And then she went berserk and threw me out.
I saw that,
And by the way, one thing I didn't show in the film, because it was almost too goofy, her husband physically jumped on me. I'm in a rocking chair and he pushes me back.
Are you serious?
Yeah, but it was so goofy. In a way, it was less threatening, even though they had the weapons and he jumps on me. He was a little guy. So I kind of, no assault here. I'm leaving. She had all these weapons. My local camera crew literally fled for their lives. They just literally ran out because they didn't know she was going to start shooting. We didn't know.
Right.
And I had my great co-producer and cameraman, Zach Roberts, with me, who is used to kind of combat and dangerous situation. He does a lot of our undercover work. So he stayed with it. He's actually in Charlottesville. He was filming the Nazis, with a gun in his face. I mean, he's fearless, and I'm not fearless. I'm just nuts. And so she's throwing me out. And then I ask her, "So you're doing this to block black people and Democrats from voting, right?" And she went, then she started swearing at me like a sailor, this elegant woman. She called me names that I could not put in the film. I'd lose my PG rating. I certainly can't say it over the air. And so I got out of there. So I'm laughing, but where did this woman get this list of 32,000 from? It's a group called True the Vote. Mm-hmm. True the Vote is the group that put out that film about supposed massive black vote fraud called 2,000 Mules. Yeah. Where they call black men mules, and they say that black men, and it's all black men, every single one. Well, there was a Hispanic in there too. That it's mostly black men who are paid $10 for every forged and stolen ballot that they can stuff into a drop box. And I have to tell you that, and they said, so I take apart that film. Now why is that film important? Why do I bring it up? Because 2,000 Mules created this hysteria about massive vote fraud. Now, the Republican and the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia ordered a review of every single drop box ballot. Because I want to remind you, Egberto, and your listeners, your ballot is not secret. The contents, your choices inside your ballot, you got that envelope. Every single envelope, if you look at it, has a barcode. That barcode has your name embedded in it. Only you can vote that thing. And what they did was they took every single envelope and matched it against a voter. Every single one of those ballots, every single one was identified with a legitimate voter. Not one single voter said, "Oh, someone else, my ballot was stolen." Someone else, not one there was not one complaint in the entire state of a ballot being stolen and voted. But nevertheless, they created this mass hysteria. And I got to tell you, the film 2000 Mules was launched from Mar-a-Lago, and your TV host was a guy named Donald Trump. So this is a Trump operation, straight up. Trump is going the only way he can win Georgia, the only way he can win Arizona, the only way he can win Texas, by the way. Texas, which you'll see in the film, is by challenging black voters, Hispanic voters,
and young voters.
A lot of American native voters who are really under the gun here. And so what's happened is, and how many, are you ready for this, Egberto? Here's the dangerous thing, which is why Leonardo DiCaprio, his dad's one of my producers too, that Leonardo launched this site. And the reason he launched the site is that we went from 88 voter vigilantes sent out by True the Vote to this year they have signed up 40,000 vigilantes, from 88 to 40,000. And guess what, Egberto? When I looked at their website, they proudly announced that they had challenged 851,000 voters as of 5 weeks ago. And yesterday I was informed that their challenges to voters is now over 1 million, mostly concentrated.
Wow.
So it's gone out of Georgia and spread like a virus.
Into Texas and all these other states. Yeah.
And in Texas. So in the film, by the way, since you're in Texas, right? Still?
Yep.
And in the film, we start out in Georgia. So Mark Elias, who's top voting rights attorney in America, he's one of the few people who understands what's going on here. And he calls us the virus out of Georgia. It spread out of Georgia to 43 states. 43 states have these old book laws on the books from the Jim Crow era, which have not been used since 1946. 43 states have these laws that says, I can say Egberto Willies does not live in Texas. Don't give him a ballot. Don't count his ballot. And you know what? Here's the problem. 95% of these million people have been challenged.
They don't know.
Absolutely. They don't know.
Yeah.
And they don't know because they're supposed to get a postcard. But most counties, like Cobb County, had no ability to send out 32,000 postcards. Someone's got to address all these things. It was just easy enough to take that list and just stick it in a computer and just block the vote. So if Egberto Willies, I know you can't really vote by mail in Texas, but if you're in Arizona and you get you get your ballot, your absentee ballot or a Dropbox ballot, and you put it in the Dropbox, the likelihood is that you have no idea that ballot has been challenged and will not be counted. Will not be counted. I should also mention, and this is a bit of advice on how not to lose your vote. Don't mail in your ballot if you can avoid it. I know that it's convenient and it's good. If I mail in my ballot because I'm a journalist and I don't know where I'll be on election day, I have no choice. I have to mail in my ballot or put it in a Dropbox. But I'm in California. I don't worry. But you'll show up. So you may not know your ballot is not going to get counted. And here's a statistic that's really not very fun. That the chance that your ballot won't be counted, that your ballot will be rejected, is 700% higher if you're black than if you're white. So then you show up. The other thing that happens to you, and this again on not from the film, but advice from Greg Palast on how to save your vote. And again, I want to emphasize, get the film. It's at saveyourvote.org, not save Egg's vote, not save my vote, save your vote. So saveyourvote.com, and you'll get a place where you can check your registration. I want you to do that. It can give you numbers if you run into trouble at the polling station for our flying team of lawyers. It gives you all kinds of information about our partners. I work with Black Voters Matter, NAACP, Rainbow Push. I just got a call from the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who wants to show it at the Congressional Black Caucus. He says, you must see this film. And then, of course, Jamie Foxx and all these wonderful people are saying you must see this film. So go to Save Your Vote, check your registration, take down the protection numbers, and then stream the film, no charge. Thank you, Leonardo and the DiCaprio family. And what I want to tell you also is if you do show up, first of all, then the second bit of advice, it's not from the film. This is now my advice from saveyourvote.com. Vote early. Go in. If you can vote early, because if you show up and they say you've been challenged or somehow the lady behind the desk may not have any idea why your name is no longer on the voter rolls or it says do not accept. And they'll say, don't worry, here's a provisional ballot. You fill out this envelope, then they'll count it later. No, they won't. If you've been challenged, you've been challenged. The only way to fix it is one, re-register. If you have time, if you check your registration right now and you've already been challenged and you're knocked off the voter rolls, you can re-register on the spot, online, wherever in any state. The second is that in some states like Wisconsin, if you're listening, Wisconsin, Nevada, and a few other states, you can register right on election day. So they show up and they say, well, fill out this provisional ballot. Say, no. I want to re-register right now. Bring your ID, bring proof of address like an electric bill. Because the little old lady behind the desk does not know that those provisional ballots aren't going to get counted. If you're not on the rolls, you're not on the rolls. So what happened is in the last election, and this is from the Elections Assistance Commission, Egberto, this is from the government itself. The last election, 10 million people were shunted to provisional ballots and 2.7 million ballots were disqualified. Let me repeat this. Wow. 2.7 million Americans lost their vote. And as I said, it's 700% more likely to be lost if you're black than if you're white. In that pile of 2.7 million votes, 8 years ago was Hillary Clinton's victory. Wow. That's where they were, in the pile of discarded provisional ballots, almost overwhelmingly from voters of color. Now, who did they vote for? Come on. So that's why they're going after you, anyone with a tint in their face, because they know that your vote is going to likely be blue.
Absolutely.
And they're not guessing.
Greg, I think you have some information for us about this program in Texas. Talk to me.
Yeah, I'm going to Texas because I've been invited by the first elected black commissioner of Harris County, which is Houston, Rodney Ellis. Now, let me tell you a little story from the film about Rodney Ellis in Texas. The film is called Vigilantes Inc, America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. It's not only blocking your ballots, it gets violent. But first, you have to know, Commissioner Ellis during COVID, because remember the last election was during COVID, said this is dangerous for thousands of people to line up, sometimes for hours together. We're gonna kill people in Houston. So he said, I'm going to send a ballot to every Houston voter, 2.5 million ballots. And he was blocked by your Texas Secretary of State, Ken Paxton, who just barely survived impeachment and removal from office for corruption. This guy, Ken Paxton, your Attorney General in Texas, gets on the air with Steve Bannon in the war room. You know, the guy who was in prison for corruption, and Trump pardoned him. And so Steve Bannon has a show called The War Room. Ken Paxton gets into the war room and he proudly declares, he said, if I blocked those 2.5 million ballots going out to Houston, which by the way has the largest black population of any city in America. He said, I blocked those 2.5 million ballots going out to Houstonians. And because of that, I can say, if I didn't do that, Donald Trump would have lost Texas. Let me repeat that. If they didn't suppress the mail-in ballots in Houston, this Republican Attorney General said Donald Trump would have lost Texas. Texas is a blue state if they let people vote. So then that's just the beginning, Egberto, as you'll see in the film. By the way, I have that clip in the film, Vigilantes Inc. Again, at saveyourvote.org. But Ellis, we had this situation where, so they accused Rodney Ellis of forging 750,000 ballots. Now, as I pointed out to him, that would take him about 200 years if he did it himself. And so I said, how'd you do it? He said, he's a big lawyer. He's a lawyer. And he said, I'm too lazy to sign 750,000 ballots. And then where do you steal 750,000 ballots? Everyone's marked to a voter. And anyway, but I'm laughing. But then here's where we stop laughing. So the MAGA nuts surrounded his house. You're an open carry state in Texas. And these guys had assault rifles surrounding his house. His daughter's having a pajama party. Can you imagine? You've got these young girls, at a party, and suddenly these guys show up with automatic weapons and Confederate flags, and they're screaming stop. They're screaming at the top of their lungs, stop the steal at these kids. And, but it's an open carry state. So finally, Rodney Ellis, the threats just kept coming, the death threats. So he was elected to do it, but he can't walk around Houston without undercover armed guards with him. Wherever he goes, he is surrounded by armed protection provided by, because the city, the police said you have to be protected. Too many nuts, and that's just the beginning. The nuts saw an air conditioning repairman's truck down the street from Commissioner Ellis's house. Again, the first African-American commissioner in Houston, Harris County. And they said, oh, that's where the ballots are. So this vigilante chased the air conditioning repairman down the road, ran him off the road, could have killed him. He rammed the guy's truck and ran it off the road. And then this vigilante pulls a gun out and puts it at the guy's head. Said, get out of the truck, get on the ground. And now you're going to open the back and give me those ballots. The guy's scared to death. Anything could go wrong. There'd be a bullet in his head. And so just at that moment, just by a miracle, the Houston police were driving by and they see a guy with a gun pointed at someone's head. So they jump out. Believe me, if the guy holding the gun had been black, he'd be dead
gone.
Right now.
Yes, yeah.
He'd be gone. But it was a white guy who's saying, I'm Houston police. This guy who had run the guy off the road is an ex-Houston cop, and he had his badge with him. And he goes, and they say, yeah, but why is there a gun at this guy's head? They said, well, because he's got these stolen ballots in the back of the truck. So they open up the back of the truck, no ballots, air conditioning supply parts and pipes. It's kind of humorous, except the guy could have had a bullet in his head.
Exactly.
So they're getting really violent. It's getting violent. And in fact, you'll see in our film in Vigilantes Inc., you'll see in Arizona, these armed vigilantes dressed like RoboCops standing next to the drop boxes in Hispanic neighborhoods to intimidate people. They're even using drones to intimidate people. I'm not kidding. Using drones going down on voters' faces. And so when I say Vigilantes Inc., it's about challenging 1 million voters. It's going to be 2 million by election day.
Absolutely.
But it's also getting dark and violent, and you'll get that whole story. And so that's very important. And I will be coming to Texas, to Houston, because Commissioner Ellis is going to sponsor a showing of the film for all elections officials so that they'll be aware of what's going on. And the commissioner will be there, and Egberto Willies will be a co-host, absolutely, of the showing of the film Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, narrated by Rosario Dawson, produced by Martin Sheen.
So, Greg Palast, I think to end this, what we want to tell folks is, first of all, where do they go to see the film free of charge?
SaveYourVote.org. Not Save My Vote, but SaveYourVote.org. And stream the film.
And what else can they do at that website again?
You can check your registration. Please check your registration. If you go to the website and do nothing more than check your registration, we have the link for every state. Check your registration. And take down the information on how to protect your vote, all the steps, voting early, no provisional ballots, and the numbers of lawyers who will show up. They're all ready to go during the early voting, starting now and all through the election.
And look, people, let me tell you, if the way to overcome all this nonsense is for us to go out there and vote in massive quantities throughout every single state. We overwhelm them with the vote. And look, Greg has given us quite a bit of information to show us why we don't have the time to be apathetic now. We don't have the time to be, well, I'll do it the next time. There's no time. You must vote early if you can, but you must vote. You must challenge if they ask about provisional ballots. Say no, re-register, as Greg Palast has just told you. But we have to take it into our hands to be responsible for our own votes. Greg, give me a short closer.
I want to tell you, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, but I just think that the voters, not the vigilantes, should pick our next president and our Senate. This is so important. And look, I'm asking you to do something. It's not too painful. Watch a movie and spread the link. Watch a fun movie. Get the popcorn out. It's weirdly fun. It's also very sad. It gives you the whole, you will love the movie itself, but it will get you ready to roll. And I just want you to take that film and the link, SaveYourVote.org, and pass it around to everyone you know, your activist friends, your inactivist friends, your crazy uncle in Iowa who thinks that Trump won the election. This is our moment. I'm not asking you to do anything more painful than watch a movie that Leonardo DiCaprio is asking you to watch, that Jamie Foxx is asking you to watch, that Rosario Dawson is asking you to watch, and that Major Gamaliel Turner flew 5,000 miles round trip to save his vote. What are you going to do to save your vote? So SaveYourVote.org.
Greg Palast, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.